Hey, this is Andrew Brown. In this video, we're going to take a look at ECS EC2. And I just want to tell you, this took me, I don't know, like 8 tries because there was just a fundamental difficulty I had, which we will talk about here. And it will help you avoid issues when setting up ECS EC2, especially with CloudFormation. But let's go take a look at ECS. So what I'm going to do is go over to the ECS service, and we're going to just click into creating a new cluster. I don't really want to create a cluster using the UI here just because they keep changing on me. Of course, when our services are running, we'll use the UI, but for the creation, I kind of want to skip that. Also, I feel that it kind of abstracts away some of the functionality, and it's better to implement this using the CLI or CloudFormation because you wouldn't know that there are capacity providers underneath. As you click here, this is actually setting up an ASG, which is our capacity provider that we'll have to associate. Yeah, let's get to it. So I already actually have in the AWS examples repo a folder called ECS EC2. And let's just walk through this and I'll talk about some of the challenges I had to help you avoid some of the issues I've had. And actually, I did a boot camp in 2023. And so I was able to pull this code. This is for a Fargate cluster, but I tweaked it here for our use case. But let's walk through this code so we understand what is going on here. This should say EC2. Not a big deal, but we'll just say EC2. Anyway, so we're using a T3 medium, and it does matter if you use T2 or T3 because T3 uses Nitro, whereas if you use the T2 line, it's going to use Zen. And the reason why that matters is that when we need to actually go get our AMI, and we want to get an ECS EC2 optimized AMI, I have that command here, it's going to vary based on whether it's T3 or T2. So if we were to go over and look at the documentation, it'll say ECS, EC2, optimized, if I can spell it here, optimized AMI here. And we go down below, they're going to have varying instructions here based on whether it is going to be Zen or whether it's going to be Nitro. It should anyway. So, but anyway, all I did was I grabbed this one. I could have swore it was like Zen and Nitro was a factor in this. But anyway, the point is that all I did was I went and grabbed the one for my region. So I'm in CA Central 1. And so I just swapped this out to be CA Central 1. So I'll just grab this link here. So if you're looking for it later on, you can find it. So just say get the ECS EC2 optimized AMI, okay? And so this is mine right here, and notice that I swapped out the region. So swap the region for your use case, okay? So that's the first thing. We defined a backend port since we're gonna be opening that up on 4567. We need to bring in your VPC ID. So this is my default one from CA Central 1. You need to replace this with yours. We can pass parameters as overrides in here. I just find it easier to do defaults when we are learning how to do stuff. For subnets, I just grabbed 2. I think 2 is okay. It depends. Sometimes services want 3, sometimes they want 2. I'm going to try to get away with 2 just because CA Central 1D gives me issues, and you have to use T3s in there, which we are in this case, but hopefully that's less of an issue. So we have our cluster here. We give it a cluster name, which I believe we have to name it. And it's better to just conventionally name it because often you need to pass that name to other ones. For cluster settings, it's only used for container insights, which I have turned off. For configuration, it's only used for exec command configuration, which allows us to run external commands. We definitely want that turned on because ECS exec is such a useful thing. Service connect, I'm going to turn off for now, but that's if we want to have service-to-service communication. And then we have the service security group. So I'm creating it here as opposed to with my service just because I like to do it this way, is to create the security group with the cluster. Notice that we have an ingress for anywhere, and it's on our port that we specified here. Then we're going to set up our auto scaling group. And notice that I've hard-coded the name because this thing is such a pain to utilize. I suppose we could take it out and let it generate out. In this case, it actually would be okay. But the reason why it was a pain is because we need to create a capacity provider, okay? And a capacity provider is the thing that tells it how to scale. And when you're using ECS EC2, you're going to be using auto scaling groups. And we need to reference that ARN. And the issue is that the AWS, the auto scaling group here, if we look at return values, there is no ARN. All it gives is the name. And you think, okay, maybe we could assemble an ARN by the name, but the problem is there's another value that you simply cannot access. So the only way to pass it along is to pass along the ARN after it's been generated. And so you literally have to copy and paste and set it in order to do it. And that's the only way we can do it, unfortunately. If anyone figures out another way, love to hear it, but that's all I could do. I'm setting the min and max here to 1. I only want 1 instance running. We're passing our subnets along here. We have our launch template, and we create a profile. We have an SSM profile here so that we can use Systems Manager, Sessions Manager to get in there if we need to get into the instance. I don't like fiddling around with the instance for EC2 on ECS ever. The most important thing in our launch template is we need to specify this ECS cluster here, right? So we need to set that so that it'll be part of the cluster. If you don't set it, it doesn't know to set it as part of the cluster. So hopefully that is configured correctly. We have a couple outputs here for the security group name and the ECS cluster, okay? So that should be good. I'm gonna go ahead and type in clear down here, and I'm gonna go ahead and deploy this. And I'm gonna make my way over to CloudFormation. And we'll go over here, click into it, and hit the change set. Okay, but it would have been really nice to have that capacity provider as the same CloudFormation script, but again, I just could not get it to work to save my life, and it seems like AWS does not want you to be able to do that. So we'll just wait for this creation to complete, and we'll be back here in just a moment. All right, so our cluster is now created with the auto-scaling group. So what I'm gonna do is make my way over to EC2 because that's where auto-scaling groups are created. And we'll go down below to auto-scaling groups. And we'll just take a look here. What I want to see is whether it is actually spinning up an instance because that's what we're going to need to work with our cluster. So I'm going to go over here to auto-scaling. And I'm just looking, no, it's not that option here, instance management. And I want to see if it's spinning one up. And so we have one that's healthy and it's in service, so that is good. And what I want to do is grab the ARN from here. Okay, I'm going to go back over to this. I'm going to go to this. I'm just going to set it here the default. Again, we could pass these along as overrides. I just do not care. If in my boot camps we do everything like 100% proper in this, not too worried about it. Okay, so in our resource capacity provider, we are setting the ARN and we're setting some managed scaling, and this is going to tell it when to scale. And so we have a target capacity of 100. And so when the target capacity is 100, then it will add another server, right? And so we have this minimum step sizing and scaling. I wonder if it'll tell us if we hover over it. Not sure why it's not showing us right now, but usually, usually when I hover over stuff, it tells me, like in our template, right? See how I'm hovering over, but I think it's because maybe I have this named as not template. But the idea is this is how much it will step up. I don't really care about scaling. I just want to get stuff set up so that we can get going here. The other question is like, would the cluster at this point know about the resources in there? So if we go over to here and see infrastructure, so notice we don't see any capacity providers. We'll go here and we can register external instances. So we can go and register them. But I mean, that's external, right? But that's not what we want to do. This is more for like, it's not for this use case, right? We wanted to auto-associate via our capacity provider. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and create our capacity provider. So I'll go ahead and hopefully this will work. You know, just so you know, I don't try to solve everything because I want to stumble through some stuff and show you some of the struggles so that you learn the same stuff as I do. So this is basically where I was last, which is basically getting the capacity provider up and then getting the service launched up. Now we can launch services either using the AWS CLI or we can utilize CloudFormation templates. I think I'll use the CLI as I just wanted to use CloudFormation for this part because this part's always tricky. It sucks tearing down clusters. So I'm going to go ahead and execute this change set, and hopefully this will create. Shouldn't take too long, so we'll just wait for this stack to hopefully, oh, nope, didn't succeed, already failed. Wow. Okay, let's take a look here and see what's wrong. The capacity provider name is invalid. It's because I took out the name. And it has to do with the length of it, so we'll just go back there and put that back in there. So just say my CP my CP ES2 basic. Okay, that's fine. Not a hard fix. And we'll go ahead and delete this. Okay, shouldn't take too long. All right, I'll pause. All right, so it looks like this time, oh, well, we're just deleting it, but we'll go ahead and deploy this again. And so it should not take too long for this to deploy. Really hoping that it works this time around. We'll go ahead and try this again and execute it. And we will wait for this to complete. Again, should not take too long. There we go, instantly created. And so now we have our capacity provider. I'm gonna go back over to our cluster. I thought we were over there. We'll go ahead and type in ECS. And let's take a look if we can see our capacity provider there. So we go into infrastructure. I'm gonna give this a refresh. And I do not see our capacity provider, which is interesting. So there must be an additional step to attach the capacity provider, which I do not have here. So I guess we'll take a look at that. But I thought that's all we needed, but I guess, maybe there's more to it. So just give me a second to find out what's next. So I just typed in ECS capacity provider, and I think this one might be it. So it says associates one or more capacity provider with a cluster. That sounds like what we want. So I'm going to go down to examples here and see if they just have some code I can work with. This one's a little bit intense, but here we have capacity providers, and yeah, notice that they pass the ARNs in as well, so I guess that's a good indicator that was my issue here. It looks like we can set a default capacity provider on the association here, so I'm going to go ahead and just copy this block here. We're going to go back over to, well, actually, what's interesting here is that it seems like the autoscaling group was created in a separate one, and then the cluster in this was created in this way. So I don't know. I guess I could have organized these files a little bit differently, so that's kind of interesting. But that's fine. It doesn't really matter. We'll go ahead and paste it in. Well, I mean, it matters based on what you want to do, but for this, it doesn't. So we'll have our cluster CP association, and so we'll need to have a reference to our cluster. I'm assuming that's just the cluster name. Is that the case here? So this will be the cluster capacity of the target. Okay, what is it? Is it the name? I'm going to assume it's the name of the cluster, okay? And so we can bring this in with the imports value. So I know I do an import like here. So here's an example where we are doing an import. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab this, as I would like to just reference that indirectly. So what I'm doing here is I'm importing a value, and I'm saying cluster stack cluster name. Okay, and if we go back over to our original one, okay, we have that there. This one is called cluster name. Great. So that is a way that we can reference it. The only thing that's missing here is a reference to the cluster. So if I go back over to this code here, here's that cluster stack. But this one in particular is named a very specific way. So this one is called title case. I don't know why sometimes I do title case and I don't. But this one is going to be ECS EC2 basic, because that is what we named this one here, ECS EC2 basic. Yeah. And so that should hopefully help us associate that stack. But before we do anything else, let's take a look at some of the references here. So we have default capacity provider strategy. I don't know if we need to set that because we're only going to have one. So hopefully we don't need to have that there. I'm going to go ahead and reference my capacity provider up here. But let's go take a look here and see if there is something that we need to set. Just going to grab this link here so I don't have to find it later. Okay, so let's go here, and as per usual, just paste it in up here if we need to quickly find it. But anyway, let's go down here. Is this one required? It is required. Okay, so we can't skip it, but we only need one here. And I don't really understand what these things do. So we'll click into this. The base value designates how many tasks at minimum to run on the specified capacity provider. Only one capacity provider in a capacity provider strategy can have a base. If there's no value specified, the default value is 0. So how many tasks at minimum to run on the specified provider? Okay, so it's not required. And then we have the weight. The weight designates the relative percentage. So if no weight value is specified, the default value is 0. Okay. So I'd probably set 1 at least here. But here it's saying the short name for the capacity provider. Let's go back here for a second and back one more time. And we'll go back down below here and take a look. So we have here this one. Okay, so didn't exactly show the same way, but we'll go ahead and grab this part here. And I'm going to go ahead and, oh, sorry, we actually want the whole part. Sorry, I didn't grab the whole thing. We want this whole part here, just to make our life easier. We'll paste that in. And we're going to reference my capacity provider. My capacity provider. Oh, it's not really copying and pasting as I was hoping that it would. There we go. And we'll set the base at the weight as 1 and the base as 0. Okay. So hopefully that will work well. And we'll go back over to here. And again, you know, if you weren't doing this via the CLI, you wouldn't even know, or the SDK, anything. Like if you were just doing this via the UI, you wouldn't even know all these components existed. And it does matter because you get deeper learning of what is going on. We'll go ahead and execute this, and hopefully this will work. If it doesn't, it's not that big of a deal. I'm used to things not working first try, but we'll see what happens. All right, so that has updated with little complaints so far, but the question is it actually working? So we're going to go over here. Now we see our capacity provider. Notice that it says managed instance protections turned off because we don't care if they get terminated here. I'm not worried about that. It manages the draining, which is great. We have a current capacity size of 1, desired size 1, min size 1. If you know SGs, you kind of understand what is going on there. So the idea is that we should now actually have a means to deploy to something here. Okay, so that will be our next step. So the next step is actually to, go ahead and deploy our container. But in order to do that, we're going to have to go ahead and create a task definition file. If we go over here, I think it's been getting easier over time. So like here, you can fill it out here if you want to provide all the information. But if we go back here just a step, they also allow you to put in the JSON. And it's nice because we get kind of a basic one that we could utilize here. So I'm going to want to go back over to here, and we're going to go ahead and just maybe organize this folder up a little bit. I'm just going to make a new folder here called bin. As this is getting a little bit messy, so if you come in here, this might be a little bit different. I really shouldn't move things while I'm working on stuff here, but I'll just go ahead and tweak this. So this one would just go back a directory. Okay. And I guess I really shouldn't move this on you. I'm going to go move this back here. I'm sorry. I just don't want to mess you up, okay? So what I'll do here is I'll just go and delete this. I was really tempted to do this, but I'll make a new file in here, a new folder. I'll rename this, and I'll use this folder for policies, because we're going to need two things. We're going to need an execution policy. Execution, JSON, and then we are also going to need a task policy. Okay? Oops. All right, and so in my bootcamp, I should have some of these files kicking around so we can just save ourselves some time. And we had a week here where we specifically were working with ECS. So if we go down below here, I believe it was like ECS week 6 again. And I just want to kind of get a head start here because it is a bit of work to write these out by hand, the task definitions. And so anytime you can pull from examples, you should. And so, yeah, we'll want that as well. So I'm going to go ahead here and just say a new file. This will be task def JSON, just to save myself some trouble. I have a hard time spelling definition. And in here, we have a backend Flask one, which is very similar to what we want to do. So I'm going to just copy its contents from this repo. Okay, I'm going to pare that down. So this is a little bit different. And so we have things like secrets. I don't care about those right now, so we'll just take those out. We have things like environment variables. Again, don't care about those right now. We have log driver, which is a good thing to enable, but for now, we'll leave it in because if we run into issues, we really need that in there. So I'm just going to call this EC2 basic. This will be CA Central 1. We'll just call this app. EC2, ECS, EC2 basic. We might also have to create this before we proceed forward, the actual log group. And then we have our port mappings. Our app is called app. So we're going to go ahead and swap that out here. The container port is 4567, I believe. We have a health check here. This one's actually reliant on having a bin that is part of our application. So I'm just going to take that out here because I don't want to do that here today. This one's going to be essential. We have our app. And then in here, we need to bring in our image. So we did create an image earlier. It's in our ECR videos. So if you have yet to do so, go do that so you can follow along here. And I'm going to go into our app. That's the one we want. Actually, I went too far in. I just need to grab the URI here. Or is it the ARN that we need? No, it's the URI, I believe. So I'm going to go ahead and just replace this here. There we go. And so that is set up. I don't want to do X-ray. I don't like X-ray. And I'm just going to take that out of there. And so we have requires capabilities. This is dependent on where you want to deploy to. So let's go take a look at what that is for task definition. So we'll just look up task definition ECS here. And so in here, we should have the syntax here. Somewhere here it should tell us. I'm just looking at what the required capabilities are. Say reference. Parameters, maybe that's a bit better. Here we go. There we go. And so we have ECS, EC2 Fargate. So because we are doing EC2, we'll specify EC2. Otherwise, when we try to deploy, it might complain. We have CPU to 256, so that's basically 0.25 and 512. These ratios are fine for Fargate, but for EC2, you have a bit more flexibility, so we can make it smaller in different increments. But Fargate follows a very specific format. For network mode, we have bridge, we have host, we have AWS VPC. Depending on what we use is going to change the behavior. This is the one that we would utilize for Fargate, and it is a very straightforward way of working with it. I'm going to change this over to bridge. Or actually, we can just do host. Actually, hold on. Hold on. Before I say that, I want to take a look at what the differences are because I kind of forget for the port mappings here. We have a slide on it. And so if it's bridge, here we are. It has complete isolation. Host is very straightforward. So I'm actually going to go with host, even though it's very simplified. And so according to host, we don't have to specify any other port other than the container port, which we do down here. So that is perfect. And so the next thing we'll need is our execution ARN and our task rule ARN. I'm going to go ahead and replace these two things here. So I'm going to go over to here and grab my account ID. You'll obviously have to do this for your account. And I'll just paste that in here. And I'll paste that in here. And I'm going to want to have two roles. And so we'll have our ECS, EC2, basic, service role ARN. And then I will have here our ECS, EC2, basic, task role ARN. So there are our two ARNs, our ARNs that are defined, and we'll have to match those names. But what I want to do is go ahead and create these. So in here, I should have policies. There we go. And so we have our service execution role. I'm not sure where our task one is. It's kind of weird that it's not there. Maybe it's over here. Is this it? No, that's the configuration for the cluster. But at least we have the service execution role, so we might have to do a little bit of work for the task role here. And so this one gets parameters. I don't know about this. Okay, so I don't really trust these ones for whatever reason, but we did define them in our slides. So I'm just going to go take a look here for the slides because I definitely pulled them out here. And so here's an example of an execution role. And then we have an example of a task role. So let's translate these over. And I'm just going to do that here, okay? All right, okay, so we need a task role here. And so some things we'll need to define in it. In our policy will probably be SSM messages. So that's going to be definitely one we're going to want. SSM, messages, create control channel. Then we have create data channel, create open control channel. And you're wondering why am I focused on these ones, is that if we want to use the ECS exec commands later on, this is the permissions we're going to need to utilize. So I'm just going to go ahead and add these now so that we don't have to worry about it. I mean, that's really all we need to add for our, well, actually, sorry, I shouldn't say that. We need to also add in a manage policy for IAM for full access. So we should have a policy in our account called AWS CloudWatch Logs Full Access that's managed by AWS. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just look at what an example task definition file. If we go down below here, oh, sorry, I mean the task role, not the task definition. The task role example AWS. And now that I'm thinking about it, we could probably just do this through the console. I'm making this really complicated for no reason. So I'm going to go over to policies here. And we're going to go ahead and create ourselves a new policy. This will be for ECS tasks. Or actually, sorry, we'll go to JSON here. And we'll bring over these here. Okay, so I want these. And this is going to be our actions that we want to bring over. Just bump this up here a bit. Okay, so we got this one, 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 this one. Okay, so those are what we have here. I'm just going to say for all resources that have this attached. And so that's going to be for our task role. So we'll go ahead. And so it has a JSON syntax issue here. Maybe just take that one out. No, does not like that one. What's the problem? Oh, no problem now. We'll go ahead and hit next. So I'm going to just say task policy or ECS basic task policy. Create that one. And then we're going to go over to our roles. We're going to create a new role. We need to make sure this matches the names that we've defined over here. So we can go ahead and grab this one. And we'll say, get this out of the way. We'll go back over to our role here. And this is going to be for ECS. So it's not exactly showing what I want. So I'm going to go here and just change the principal to what I need it to be. And this one is going to be a service. And the service is going to be ECS tasks, Amazon, AWS.com. Okay, I'll make sure that has doubles here. There we go. So we'll go ahead and hit next. And then I want that policy I just created. So that's just ECS basic. There it is. Excellent. We'll hit next. I'm going to call it this. All right. I will also want to go into this role and add in CloudWatch. So I'll just have to zoom out here. It's kind of messing up. So we'll say ECS here. We're looking for basic right here. And then we will go and add permissions. I'm going to say attach a policy. And we want CloudWatch logs. Full access. Another thing that we might want, we don't need it for this, but like if we were using X-Ray, we might want to attach the X-Ray daemon because that is a very common thing to add. But I'm not doing that right now. I don't care about it. We want to now go set up our execution policy. And so this one is a little bit different. It needs a lot more stuff. So I'm going to go over here. It's not really a JSON file, whatever, it's fine. But we need a couple for ECR. So we need ECR get authorization token. We need ECR batch check layer availability. Availability. I'm really bad at spelling, so the chances of me spelling something wrong here is high. Get download URL for layer. ECR batch get image. We could probably search like what it needs, and we could probably grab this from the documentation of AWS, but I'm just gonna write it out manually here. Okay. Put log events. And so this is what we're going to need in order to pull our image from ECR, okay? And do some basic logging. We are gonna give it full access as well here, so that might be a little bit redundant, but I'm gonna do that anyway. Okay, so there is that. We'll go back over to policies. We'll create a new policy. I'm gonna go to JSON here. I'm gonna bring over this code here. I'll copy that. And I'm just gonna paste it in as such. And I'm just going to say for all resources here, I'll take this one off because we don't need it. Actually, we do need that one. That one's fine. There we go. We'll go ahead and hit next. I'm going to call this one ECS basic execution policy. Okay. And then we'll go over back to here and we will get our execution role that we want to call here. I'm going to go ahead and create this new role. We'll create it. The use case here, again, we'll do custom trust policy here because it's not really selecting what we want. So let's say resources, capital R, resources. Oh no, it's service. Sorry, service. Bump this up so you can actually read it. ECS tasks, Amazon, AWS.com. Next. And I'm going to choose that policy we created, ECS execution. This one here, we'll go ahead and hit next. We'll paste in this name here so that it matches the one we have here. I'm going to go look for that one basic. And I just want to add CloudWatch logs, full access, just so that we don't have any problems. CloudWatch logs, full access. We'll go ahead and add that permission. So that's that. I want to go and make sure we create our log group. So I'm going to go AWS CLI log group create. And we'll go into version 2. I'm going to go down to examples here. I'm going to grab this one. And I want to go back here. Create log group. Okay, and this one will be named based on whatever we put in our task definition, which is here. And so this one was called what? EC2 ESS EC2 basic. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to copy that. Does it need a region? I don't know. I'm going to just set a region anyway. Well, we don't have to because mine's already defaulted to that one. So I'm going to go ahead and make this now. There we go. And so we are getting closer. The next thing would be to deploy our service. Well, actually we have to create our task definition. Create our task definition. So I probably have some code somewhere lying around here for this on week 6. So probably if we go back to code here, and I go back to main, and I go down to week 6. Again, just trying to save myself some time here. Oh, that one's not in there. Weird. Okay, so we'll go to week 6 here. Journal 6. There we go. And so I might have some CLI commands in here. We just created the log group, which is fine. We could also change the retention if we wanted to. Notice this one is a little bit different because we're doing everything via the CLI. But what I'm looking for in here is just creating the task definition. So somewhere in here, I will have it. It says passing sensitive data, creating the IAM role, creating the task role. You see, I did a lot of work here to make this one here. Security, register the task definition. So this is what we want. Okay, so I'm going to grab this line here. And I'm going to adjust this because All this is just relative, so I'm just going to take this out here and say task def JSON. And as long as we're in that folder, it should work. And then hopefully this will work. First try, that'd be really nice. And it looks like it registered it. Let's go over to ECS and make sure that's the case. So we'll go over to ECS here. And we'll go over to our task definition. And here is our task definition. You see we have version 1. If we keep registering, it will then increment it. So we don't have to do anything to increment it. Notice that we can see how much allocation we have here, task placement, volumes, etc., stuff like that. Here's the JSON for our task definition if we are not confident with what's going on there. But the point is that we're now to the next step to deploy our container. So I'm going to go down here and just say deploy container. And I have a feeling that I probably have instructions somewhere here. So here we have create the service. So that's going to be the next thing I want to do here. Okay, I'm just going to say serve. And I'm going to go ahead and grab some code here to save us some time. This one was in the JSON backend there. So if I go back here, I'll go to week 6 again. And I just want to go into, where was it? AWS service. Where did it say what it was? I already forgot. Oh boy. This is week 1. That's why it's not working. Week 6 again. Okay, and I'm going to go into, here's the AWS JSON. And so in here, I have an example of configuring this. Okay, so I'll bring this over and I'll make a new file here called serve JSON. And if you notice here, what we're doing is we are specifying all this stuff, coming back over to our README. We're doing CLI JSON input. So we could go through here and set all the parameters here, but this one is just so large that it's just easier to configure it this way. So we need our cluster name, our launch type. So our launch type here is EC2. Our desired count will be 1. Our cluster is not called CRUDder. So we'll go over here and grab our actual cluster name, which is this one. Okay, so this is our cluster name. Enabled ECS manage tags. That's a great idea. I'd rather ECS manage them. We're going to leave enabled execute command on. We're not going to utilize it in this video, but we'll leave it on so that we can do stuff here. We can associate with a load balancer. For this, I don't feel like doing that here today. We have some network configuration. This makes sense when you are working with AWS VPC configuration, right? So I don't think we need to set this one up here, but I'll go take a look here and see what we have here for create service, because this one's specifically for Fargate. Okay, so if we go here, we have network configuration. This parameter is required for task definitions that use AWS VPC, which we are not using. We're using host here. So I'm going to take this part out. And service connect configuration is a good idea, but we're not using that here right now. So we'll take that out. We have propagate tag service, which is fine. The service name is going to be called app. And I believe our backend Flask is called, or our task definition is called app. Let's make sure that's the case by checking it. It's actually called backend Flask, so it's technically true. I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of this task definition because I kind of messed this one up here. Now I'm going to go ahead and just deregister it. Okay, and we'll go back under task definitions. It's no longer active. I'm going to go back over here. I just want to be very consistent with how we're doing stuff here. As we create this task definition here, I'm going to go into our task dev. I'm just going to rename this back to app. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and register that again. We'll hit enter. And I'm going to go back to our serve. And so this is our most basic one. Now, do we need something else here? Maybe. I'm sure it will tell us when we launch if we run into any issues here. So I'm going to go ahead and now attempt to launch our service. So it says it's active and launching. It'd be nice if it works the first time around. Okay, and so down below, we have our service here. It says deployment and tasks. It's in progress. And we're going to click into the app here. And since we have logs enabled, if something happens, we'll see logs. There is a bit of a delay, so we're not going to see things immediately when things happen. But we always want to check logs and events to see if there is any issues early on. And here it says service app was unable to place a task because no container instance met all of the requirements. No container instance were found in your cluster. For more information, etc., etc. So suggesting that there are no container instances. And maybe what happened here is that when we had the capacity provider, which is here, maybe it's supposed to show it here when it's not showing up. So that could possibly do with how the EC2 instance is named. What I'm going to do is go into that EC2 instance and take a look here and see what the issue could be. So we'll go ahead and do this. Obviously, when we use the UI, it takes out a lot of that work here for us. But again, if we're going to be programmatically doing this, we have to know how to do it. Okay, so we'll log into here. And so I believe this is an Amazon Linux 2 instance. So I'm going to go ahead and just type in sudo su-ec2 user. And so that will log us into the EC2 user. I'm going to go back over to here. I'm going to look at our template YAML file. And what I'm looking for is where we defined this here. Okay, so we should have ECS cluster here. We should be able to check its name. So I'm going to type in cat or just print, maybe just print here. And we'll paste in this because this should be an environment variable. Or just print like that. Or env ECS cluster maybe. Okay, what if we just type in env? So what I'm looking for is this. Oh, no, it gets added to this file. I'm in the wrong place, sorry. So we'll go ahead back here, we'll paste that in. And I'm gonna just cat the contents of it. And so it's showing ECS EC2 basic ECS cluster. So that is properly set up, but there is no container instance. So that's what I'm gonna have to figure out next, why it's not showing up. So just give me a moment. All right, so I just asked ChatGPT and it's suggesting that maybe I did not add, I mean, this is what I think it is that I don't remember us adding anything in our permissions for our EC2 instance to be able to actually register and deregister containers. So that's probably what our problem is. So if we go back over to our code here into our template YAML, we define in here this role here, and this role does not have permissions to do so. So what I'm going to do is go over to IAM, and let's see if they already have maybe a predefined one. It'd be nice if they did. And so we'll go and take a look here, and what I'm looking for is, or maybe even a policy would be nice. We'll just type in ECS. And what I'm looking for is if there's something that would give us those permissions. So this is not exactly the same thing. What are we looking for? We're looking for username EC has necessary permissions to register, deregister containers. Okay. Okay, we'll just expand this, or maybe we'll just read these here. So let's see if there is one that's already here. This is probably for the cluster, so enable ECS to manage your cluster, which is fine. Register instance with load balancer, not exactly what I want to do here. We have some stuff here. So I'm gonna have to find out what it is. Just give me a moment, okay? All right, so ChatGPT generated one out for me. I just asked it to do that. And so I'm thinking maybe what we'll do here is we'll just copy this. And we'll go back over to here because if we go down here, yep. I'm going to go and just paste this in here. And we'll pare this down. So this will be one. Okay. All right. And then we have this one here. I might just ask to convert it to, why am I writing this out by hand? Convert the policy to CloudFormation, okay? That'll save me some time because here I'll be goofing around all day trying to format this and I'll make mistakes. So what we'll do is we'll let it generate out and we'll try to place it in here and see if that resolves our issue. Because logically that kind of makes sense. So we have a managed policy here. Amazon EC2 service control. The IAM role policies for the EC2 instances. Okay. Now, does this one exist? So that's something I want to take a look at here. I mean, I don't see this one here. Is this one that already exists? Okay, and so sometimes these policies don't exist until you create a cluster via the UI. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and make one. And I just want to see if it will generate one out for me here. So I'm going to go ahead and just do this really quickly. Again, not trying to do anything proper, but all I want is that manage role. So we will let that generate out there, even though that was like an easy way to make a cluster. And what I'm going to do is just grab all of this. And I'm going to just paste that in here. Yep, it's the right level of indentation. And I'm just going to switch it out with this one here. And what I'm going to do is bring in this manage policy down here so that if I want to get access, I can. The question is like, why wouldn't this role just contain everything that we need? But I guess we'll find out here in a moment when it generates out. So I'm going to go back over to our cluster here, and we should have another junk cluster, which is fine. I want to go see if that role exists now. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this, refresh here, and hit enter. And I don't see this container service role. So where is it? I guess we could just make it manually. So unless it creates itself here, which it's not doing. All right, just a second. Here it keeps suggesting that one does exist. I'm going to go ahead and say create a, is that policy maybe? And then we just name it. Hold on here. The permissions policy section, verify. Oh, is that the name of it? I guess because I saw the word role, I was thinking that maybe, oh, okay, so there it is. All right, I understand now. Okay, so basically we're grabbing that policy here, and we'll go back here. Yeah, I guess the role word was throwing me for a loop. But again, I want to check what's inside of that. So let's go take a look here and view the JSON. I just want to make sure we're not just repeating stuff blindly here. So, okay, so we got some stuff in here. I'm going to go back over to this one. Is it the same? Let's go take a look here. Because again, ChatGPT is stupid, so it might be just giving us junk. Okay. And so I just want to see if any of these overlap. Yeah, it might. All right, whatever. I'm just going to go with it. I just want it to work here today. But it's possible that all we need is that one particular one. I don't know. Let me just read it a bit more thoroughly, okay? You know what? I think this one's sufficient because it says deregister and register and has all the other stuff in it. So what I'm going to do, I know we're all over the place here, but I'm just going to go and just do that. Okay, and so I think this is probably what we actually want. And that is totally fine. So we'll have to go back and update this. That junk cluster didn't really do what I thought it was going to do, so we'll go ahead and delete it, as that policy was always there, right? But I thought we had to have some kind of class created there, which is fine. So let's going to go ahead and tear that stuff down. I'm going to go back over to here, and I'm going to go ahead and deploy the original one here, and so hopefully that will fix our issues. Actually, before we do that, and this thing is kind of annoying, so I'm going to go over here for a second. We're going to go back over to ECS because we have a service that's just probably like continually trying to deploy that's not going to succeed. And so what I want to do here is go to the service and just go ahead and delete it because it's never going to launch. We'll say force delete here. Okay. So what I'll do is go back over to here and we'll attempt another deploy here. It's saying the template is invalid. So now I've made a mistake or I've mucked it up a bit. There's an issue right here, maybe. All right. Just give me a second, okay? All right, so I just kind of undid quite a bit of stuff here, and I went back to when we had the SSM role. I renamed it to ECS instance role, and I made sure I placed it here. I think what I might have done is I might have updated the wrong value, but anyway, that might resolve our issue here. We'll go ahead and attempt our deploy. Still has a frickin' problem. What is wrong with my template? There's nothing wrong with it. Just give me a second, okay? Oh, you know what it is? It's not my script. It's because I moved these folders and I added these dots here because I was gonna put it in a folder and I introduced a mistake. So that's totally my fault here. So now it should work fine. We'll go ahead and deploy it. I just wasn't carefully reading it. Invalid template value. So at least we're getting something a bit closer to what we want here. We'll go back over to our template here. I'm gonna type in value. And it looks like our outputs is missing here. Outputs, like that. Is that what our instance profile looked like before? Now I'm not 100% certain, so I'm just going to go over to CFN, and I'm just going to double check what our template used to have here, making sure I didn't just accidentally remove some code, as it's very easy to do that. So go down below here. Nope, I think I just missed that one line, so that's fine. We'll go back over to here. We will attempt to deploy again. Okay, so we'll go back over to CFN. And it's very important that we check how this is going to change, because if it changes the auto-scaling group value, then that could be an issue. I don't think it will, but we will get into the stack. I'm not sure why it's giving me such trouble here. Oh, over here. And what I want to look at here is what it's going to change. So it's going to modify the ASG group. In fact, it says true as in replacement. And then we're going to have an instance profile modified. It's going to add this role. We're going to have our modified launch template and then remove. So I want to double check the auto scaling group after we deploy it to make sure that it actually still has the same ARN so that our capacity provider is working okay. So we'll just wait for this to deploy. All right, so our update is almost complete here. It says update complete, cleanup in progress. I don't think I've ever seen the cleanup in progress stat there, but yeah, the question will really be, is that ASG having a different name? So I guess since it's technically done, we'll go over to EC2 here and we'll take a look at our auto scaling group. And what I'm looking for is the ARN. So if I refresh this here, we apparently have 2 here. And the question is, which is our new one? And you know what I think happened is that I put back in the name, the explicit name, as opposed to the auto-generated one. And now I have an additional auto-scaling group, which is a mistake on my part. So I'll have to go here and delete this name and then update this again. But I'm going to go ahead and hopefully not make another mistake, because that's really frustrating. And this thing just gets confusing here. We'll give this a refresh here. And I'm not sure why it says clean in progress still, but I guess I'll wait for this to finish that status, okay? There we go, it finished. And so I know this seems silly, but I'm gonna go ahead and do this again. I took out that name. Okay, and so I'm gonna wait for this here. We'll go over to change sets. We'll see what's changing here. It's just modifying that, which it actually has to do a replacement, which is totally fine. I'm gonna go ahead and let that do that. I'm gonna wait for this to completely finish, okay? All right, so that update is complete. And again, I want to check the auto scaling group, because if that is not set correctly, we're gonna have an issue here. I'm gonna give this a refresh. And so now we only have the 1. And so I'm going to go into here and I want its ARN. So we'll go back over to our capacity provider. We have it here. And we'll just make sure that it is the same or different. And so you can see that it is completely different. So that's where we're going to have an issue. So I'm going to go ahead and just change this to default. Okay. And we're going to have to now update this. So I'm going to go ahead and deploy our capacity provider with the new value. Hopefully it'll pick up the change. Okay. So we'll go back over to here into our capacity provider. And it says it failed. The submitted didn't contain any changes. It definitely did, because there was a change of values. So that part is a little bit frustrating. Okay, so we might have to pass this in as override parameters for it to work, which is totally fine. So what I'm going to do is go over to our deploy script here, here, and then we'll put in our override parameters. So I'm going to go and just click this to get to the reference. And in here, there's an option for parameter override. So we'll go down below here. And this follows a format of string and string. Or no, it's, yeah, key and then parameter. Okay, great. Apparently we can supply it a JSON file, which would be nice as well. But I'm going to go ahead here and, whoops, that is not what I wanted to do. Somehow it jumped to the wrong place, but I want to go back over to here, copy this so I don't have to spell it and make a mistake. Can I not copy that? Oh, I didn't actually have it copied. All right, and I'll just paste this in here somewhere. Paste, there we go. And so the idea here is that I want to set this ARN. Okay, so I'll do this. And then we will grab that value here. And we'll paste it in. Oh, come on, just cut it. There we go. Sometimes it's a pain, you know? I'm not this bad with a keyboard. It's just when you're using a cloud developer environment, it is very finicky. Okay, and I just don't like VS Code, to be honest. But it's what I use. Just to make sure this works without issue, I'm going to give this double quotations around it so there's less of an issue. And make sure you have the backslash on the end there. So let's see if that fixes our issue here, because it couldn't detect any changes because it was in the default. And we'll go back over to here and we'll go back into this. And so now we'll give this a refresh here. And I believe it's this one here. And so we're going to see a modification. It is going to conditionally replace the capacity provider, but swap this out here. So go and execute that, and supposedly that shouldn't take too long. But the idea is that we want to see the container instance, because that's the only way we're going to be able to get this to work if we do this and we have a rollback for some weird reason. So we'll take a look here and see what the cause of the rollback is. So what is the reason? You're going to tell me. CloudFormation cannot update a stack when a custom name resource requires replacing. Okay. So maybe the cluster stack name needs to be changed as well, but I thought that was the default cluster stack. So what I'm going to do, just to make my life way easier, because it seems like we should be able to easily pull this back, I'm just going to delete this. Okay. And then by deleting, we'll just launch it up again, and maybe we'll have less of an issue. Sometimes it's worth our trouble to do that, but I thought we could do that. And not in all cases can you actually update stuff. Sometimes you are supposed to delete it. I'm not sure if that's the case here. So we'll wait for that to delete, okay? All right, so that is now deleted. So we'll go ahead and we will deploy this again. And this time I think we'll have less of an issue. So we'll give this a nice refresh here. We'll go into here and we will execute this change set. And hopefully I have not made another mistake. And it failed again. Why? I don't know. Probably the same reason. Let's take a read here. Invalid request. The specified auto-scaling group does not exist. Specify the auto-scaling group and try again. So this is suggesting that the one that I passed is not correct or it does not exist. And you know what? I did copy the default one over. So maybe that's the problem, is that I actually didn't take the correct one. So I'm going to copy this again. And this one starts with F21. What does this one start with? F21. Well, that's not a good sign. But the end here is 3xt, and this one is 3xt. So yeah, that is not good. So just to make my life easier, I'm going to go back here. And again, you know, it's not the best way to do this, but I'm just going to place it in here. Because those parameter overrides can be a pain. I actually have my own little library that I have to bring those in here. I've just been kind of avoiding this the entire time. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just try it this way. Okay, so I'll delete that again. And then once that's deleted, which it is, we'll go ahead and try to deploy this again. Okay. All right, and we will wait for this, okay? All right, so that is now completed. We'll go back over to ECS. and we'll see what we have here. So we go into this, we go to infrastructure, and there we have our container instance. So that indicates that if we attempt to deploy our service, it should now go into there, which is great. So let's go back over to our README where we have some of our information here, and we're going to go ahead and attempt to launch this. Before we do, let's just make sure we check our task definition file. I believe that we don't have to change anything because it is based off the cluster, right? So if we go into our service file, which is serve. Yeah, so I believe that this is just going to work if we go ahead and deploy this. So we'll go ahead and try this. And actually, before we do, I also just want to check our task definition, making sure that we don't have necessarily another version of it. Excellent. We'll go ahead and hit enter. And hopefully this time we will have something that is in good shape. Now, it just takes a lot of time and effort to get these things set up, but once you get it rolling, it's less of an issue. But this infrastructure stuff is always particularly difficult. Again, let's go to logs. Logs is going to be a bit delayed. We'll go to events here. And so you can see that it is starting up. It's in a ready state, so that is good. Okay, the other thing that we usually would like to check is a health check, but we don't have that. Logs are now populating, and you can see that it's starting up the application on 4567, right? And it's binding on 000. So the idea is that it should be accessible from anywhere. So now the next question is, how are we going to access our application? Because in order to do so, we need to route to it. So if we go over to our cluster here, and we go to app, we go to configuration networking. We don't have any network configuration, but we do have that underlying EC2 instance. And so the question is, can we access it on the port of the IP address of the EC2 instance that we launched? And is our EC2 instance that we launched even publicly available, which is another question. So we'll go back over to our cluster, to our infrastructure, and we'll go down here, we'll click into this, and we see that we have a public DNS. So technically with this public DNS, we should be able to access it, right? So go here and we'll say 4567, and it doesn't have a URL. That doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't work, but remember that we created this thing with this API that's called hello, and we're getting stuff back. So we are in good shape. So say Andrew plus Brown. Look at that. So we got it working. There's obviously a lot more that we can do with ECS. ECS EC2 is very challenging to use. Its specific use case is when you need fine-grained control over the instances underneath. But for the most part, Fargate is what I would prefer to use. And so basically, even though if we're in the ECS EC2 section, I really want to focus on Fargate, okay? Just because it's going to be a simpler process. The one interesting thing is that we use the host mode. We could obviously change to bridge mode if we wanted to and see what that looked like. But I don't think it's that necessary. It's very straightforward on how to do that. All we'd have to do is add bridge and then add the host port. I guess we should do it because if we don't get the practice, you'll not know how to do it. So I've convinced myself to change my mind. And so what I'll do is I'll go to the task definition, and we're going to change the network mode from host to bridge. And then what we'll need to do is add the host container. So I think it's just host port, but I'm going to go double check the port mappings here because it's very easy to forget. And it is called, host port. And so for the host port, I'm going to change this over to 80. And so the idea now is that we'd be able to access it on the regular thing. So let's go ahead and push this task definition. This is also a good example of us seeing different versions of it. We'll go ahead and enter. Host port must be this. I think it just has a capital on it by accident there. We'll go ahead and hit enter. And so the idea is that this should register a second task definition. We go over to here to our task definitions, and we now have a version 2, which is excellent. So if we go over to our service file, we now can change this to be, well, actually it should always take the latest, right? So if we go back over to our service here, and let's say we were to update this, it should always take the latest, but we can change it here and say 2, and we'll force a new deployment, which will shut down the old one. And so it should pick up the changes here. Okay. And so what's going to happen here, it's going to terminate the old one and then spin up a new one. Because we have a min and a max of those values, right? So we'll just hold off here and see what happens. But I think that's what it should do. It should tear down the old one, right? But we'll see. I mean, I don't see it tearing down, which I'm used to it tearing down because we only need one, but it doesn't seem to be doing that. Let's go over to tasks here and refresh here. And yeah, they're both running. So I'll just go ahead and just terminate this one. So just say stop selected. Okay. And then the idea is that we want this one to be in running state, which it looks like it is. And it's really fast because it's not provisioning anything, right? It's just launching onto an EC2 instance. So that's one advantage of utilizing ECS EC2 over Fargate. It's just really fast container launches. And so what I want to do is go back over to here. And instead, I just want to take out the 4, 5, 6, 7. And let's see if that works. Okay, so far I'm not seeing anything. Oh, there we go. All right, so I believe it's working. And so that's how we would change that. But anyway, we're all done here. And so what we'll do is go ahead and tear everything down. So let's go over to our service. And we are going to go ahead and delete our service. And we'll force the delete. And we'll delete it. And we'll just wait for that to be completely gone. The tasks have to vanish. So let's just make sure. Yep, the tasks are now gone. So now we can tear down our cluster. So go back over to our stacks and we will delete this. And we'll go to this one and we'll delete it. And there we go. So I am going to confirm for all this to delete. I think we have to delete these in layers. But once it's all teared down, then we will just end the video, okay? All right, that one's teared down. We'll go ahead and delete this one. And we'll wait for that to delete. All right, so that is now teared down. So we are in good shape. I'm going to go ahead and just save my code here for later on so that anybody wants to use it, they can. So this will just be ECS EC2. And yeah, that was a really hard one. And it gets a lot more complex as soon as you start adding other services. Then you'll need a load balancer. You'll have to use Service Connect for communication to communication between services. But just understand that those things might be out of scope for me to show you practically because on the exams, you know, they just want you to know about them as opposed to actually being able to do them. But, you know, if you see me do a boot camp using containers, that's all the stuff that I would generally cover. But anyway, yep, we're in good shape here, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, so ciao.